the Rambam, who's considered one of the greatest thinkers of Jewish thought in the last 1500 years, writes very clearly the importance and value to both Christianity and Islam, which are both seen as kind of offshoots of the Old Testament, as being bringers of God consciousness to the world, that we need all these different paths, right? If it weren't for both Christianity and Islam, which make up a tremendous amount of the populace on the planet, there would be significantly less God consciousness on the planet. And so we have to recognize that everything is part of a much greater plan, a much greater vision for reality. There's no one space that a person finds themselves in and then boxes themselves in that room and says, okay, this is it. This is the end all and be all to reality. We have to realize that the world is so broad and so deep, and people are important. Everyone's journey is important. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I've really been looking forward to this conversation, and I want to welcome to the podcast today, Moshe Gersht. I'm going to say it one more time.
Gersht.
There you go. I want to make it correct. And I again, my friend, I'm so grateful that you've taken the time out to spend it here with me today. And I welcome you to the podcast. And what I want you to do is just share a little bit about yourself leading up to this very moment to give the audience a little bit more insight.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here, and so nice to spend some time with you, San. My name's Moshe. Originally, I was born with the name Theodore, so I was Theo most of my life growing up. I'm from Los Angeles, California, if you know that side of the world. And gosh, what's the little bit about me? Why should we even speak about me at all? But I guess if we're going to, I spent 7 years as the lead singer of a rock band in LA. And that was my journey to spiritual evolution. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion at some point in my journey that there might be something more to life than being on the stage and reflecting just that part of my human experience. That sent me to about 15 years of intensive study, prayer, and meditation in Jerusalem, where I fell in love with the world of Torah, and ultimately to the world of consciousness and spirit. The last 5 or 6 years, I've been writing and teaching. Had the privilege and pleasure to teach from where I'm sitting now, which is I'm sitting here in Israel, but to teach around the world. I just feel very blessed to be alive at this time. We were sharing the beauty of being alive in the 21st century and being able to share these conversations and these ideas in a broad way, collectively. Feel very grateful to be here. So thank you.
Again, thank you again for sharing your time with us today. And it's so amazing. Welcoming really the first conversation on my podcast, and I've really had I've been very grateful to have several hundred conversations with many conscious seekers. And I kind of put it in that category because this is sort of like a moment where you embody what resonates with you as this individual or collective. Really, it depends on where you're at in your own realization of the very moment. And it's so powerful that you speak on this. And, any of my students or OGs of the channel can feel the palpable resonance that's taking place between the two of us right now. And it's tangible. And so I would love you to go into more depth into the fabric of what it is that motivates you to immerse yourself in your belief system and how you share that with the world.
Sure. Thank you. So maybe I'll start with why I chose to go to Jerusalem as opposed to another place. I know it's not necessarily the typical place you go to search for truth. A lot of people I know have gone to India or to the Amazon. People go to a lot of different places to find truth, to find meaning in this world. I was born and raised a Jewish kid in LA. And so for me, growing up, that the vision of the place you go to look for meaning and purpose was Jerusalem, but I didn't have clarity as to what I was going to find. But something was calling me there. And I do believe that we all come into this space, into this world, with different callings, different things that are moving us in the direction that we ultimately manifest and take space in our life. So I came to Jerusalem looking for answers to what a successful life looked like. It became very clear to me at a young age that you can be successful at what you do, not succeed at life. You can still fail at life on some level. And that was still maybe coming from a perspective that success and failure were concepts that I really identified with. Uh, Today, I don't even know that those words really resonate at the deepest level. I don't know that you can fail at life, and in the same way, therefore, you can't necessarily succeed. Because if you can't get it wrong, that maybe you can't get it right either. But what I found when I got here was a deep resonance with ideas of truth. I found people that were living meaningful lives. I found people that were grounded in something that was beyond the personal self gratification. And that was really the beginning of the journey. There seemed to be that there was something more than just the world that we were seeing on the surface, the physical reality, the material reality, and that there was an information and an energy field that existed and was pervasive in the world that we were living in. And specifically, the world of Torah, has layers like every spiritual path. And at the deepest layer, whether it's Kabbalah or the world of Hasidus, the mystical, almost beyond philosophical, psychological path within that framework, I found unity. Maybe that's the right word. I found unity and love and peace. At least that's what I was drawn towards. When you ask what was I drawn towards, I was drawn towards this beautiful picture of a reality that has a capital G good, a good without an opposite, uh, and one that when you lean into it and allow it to be, life unfolds in a very beautiful and magical way. That was true for me for about 5 or 6 years. And at some point, and I don't know when it started, but I do remember when it kind of hit an apex, a climax of feeling broken again. Actually, part of my journey was that about 5 or 6 years into my path of lots of study and lots of prayer, I I think I felt distant from that truth, meaning that it's almost, if you can imagine, the truth was there as a concept, and the desire was still very strong inside of me, but I wasn't living it in an embodied way. It wasn't in me. It was still something that was outside of me, something that I was trying to reach and grab onto and hold as mine, but it wasn't mine yet. And that darkness was an important part of my journey and ultimately led me to a very broad range of literature and teachers to look for the synthesis, the unity, the confluence of all spiritual paths and where they met and led together. It took me deeper in the world of Torah down this track of Kabbalah and Hasidus, uh, and trying to find the language by which I could integrate a lot of these ideas. And when I started to find them in a lot of these, I almost like cross paths, like all the electricity of everything kind of coming together, both internally as well as what I was taking in from the outside. Went through a handful of very powerful spiritual experiences uh, that ultimately culminated in this sense of freedom, maybe liberation. Is the right word for it. Uh, the just this knowing that all is well, all is well because all is as it is and is continuing to flow in that way, and we are an extension of that divine unity. And though the language was beautiful, it was really the experience that changed things for me. And coming to that place, there was a recognition that if I, who am just another person on this planet, can have that experience and come to that knowing, then we all can. And that calling came from a desire to achieve or get or attain something, to just the desire to share that experience, to share that knowing, to share that knowledge, to connect with others who are looking, not to preach in any way, but to just to share to those who want to listen. And if those who don't want to listen, that's beautiful too. That's exactly where they're supposed to be. And for those who want to criticize, that's beautiful too, because that's exactly where they're supposed to be. And for those who want to listen, from my experience and from what I've taken in, that's beautiful too. And to just really be in that flow and to be in that space. So maybe in kind of a vague, slightly obscure way to respond to your question, I think that's where I'm at. I feel so grateful to feel deeply connected to the source of this universe, whether you call it that God or love or the way. It's all one to me.
That was so beautiful because, when you're integrating this journey, and we look at it as a Taoist, this seeking the present moment, the knowing, sort of almost like parallel to a Gnostic sort of realization, and from your own admission, the esoteric, deeper understanding and methods within the Kabbalah and the Torah and how that integrates and what that really means. I would love you to share a little bit more with the audience the intersection of these things from a Jewish path of realization and what that really means, the fundamentals of it. Because I feel like there's a very vague sort of understanding of Judaism, and most people don't have a clear understanding. What does that really mean? And when you mention Kabbalah and Torah, what does that mean to you? And what does that mean to someone who's listening?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. So Torah, generally speaking, is seen as the spiritual, path of the Jewish people, that which was received at Sinai about 3,000 years ago. The tradition is a little over 3,000 years to date. Alongside, well, not alongside, but within Torah, Torah comes in layers, right? So there is what you might call the surface layer, which can be understood by any person who picks up a book. But once you start to dig into it, beyond it, there are three deeper layers. The Hebrew for them is pshat, drush, remez, and sod, which literally translates to the outer layer, the deepening, the secrets, and then, or the hints, and then the secrets. Uh, what that means to me is, as a framework, is that everything in this world comes in a package of layers, right? And so the deeper you go in, the same way that when you meet a person, you first see, their face and their body, and you see the way they behave in this world, and then you spend some time with them, and you see that there's a whole human being on the inside, their emotional structure, and then you realize that there's a thought and belief structure, and then you go beyond that, and there's a consciousness on the inside. The same way that there are those four layers. So the Torah itself is expressed as having those same four layers. So what people pick up as maybe the Old Testament or the Bible is one part, but even that goes within these same layers. And the Talmud and the Zohar and the Medrash are all part of the Torah, which has four layers to it. Now, when I think about Kabbalah, the word Kabbalah itself means the receiving of a transmission. That's what it means. It means to receive. It means to be in alignment with something deeper. And as you come into that space of alignment, you receive a deeper insight and a deeper knowledge. And there's a vast body of knowledge and wisdom that was ultimately put down and written together in if I recall, it's either the 13th or the early 14th century, but the tradition goes back about 3,000 years. And that's all the mystical side, the mystical, philosophical, psychological side to what Torah is. Framework wise, when I speak about there being like a unifying system, so the same way that there's a chakra system, right? There's a 7-part chakra system. So in the world of Kabbalah, there's a 10-part sefirot system, which parallels in many ways the 7 chakras. In many ways, it parallels the different elements of the body or the different parts of the universe. And one of the beautiful things I love about the world of Kabbalah is the it's almost like the bridge between language and math. There's a beautiful mathematical system that's built into the language to help point to different elements of our reality. It- you know, the, for the amount of time that we have here, right? So maybe just to choose one element or one idea. So the number one, right? Which, if we're going to point to one number, I think the one is a good one to point to. The number one in Torah in Hebrew is the word echad. So the word echad, the way that it's spelled is with the letters aleph, chet, and daled. Those letters, each one has their own numerical value, right? Every letter in the Torah alphabet has a value attributed to it, which is called gematria. So if you were to write out the word one, so the letter aleph has a gematria of 1, chet has a gematria of 8, and dalet has a gematria of 4. Together is 13, right? 1, 8, and 4 is 13. The other word in Torah that has the same gematria of 13 is the word love, ahava, which is an aleph, a hey, a bet, and a hey, which is 1, 5, 2, 5, which again is 13. Which again points to this idea of an underlying unity, which is reflected in this idea that we call love. But if you double click on that and continue to go in, so why is the word, or the word for the number one, echad? So those three spaces, the 1, the 8, and the 4, reflect three different planes of existence, three different planes of reality. The furthest, the last letter, Daled, 4, points to the 4 directions, north, south, east, west. That points to a material reality. The number 8, which is the Ches, which is the letter before it, points to a spiritual, energetic flow of reality. And then, of course, the first letter of the word Aleph is 1, which points to the source of all reality. And so you get this basic breakdown of reality, which is source consciousness, a flow that moves into the world, and then a physical reality. So to truly get unity means to hold on to all the spaces. It's not just connecting to something spiritual or something abstract, and it's not just looking for unity in the physical world, and it's not just being involved in a flow of spiritual expression. It's being able to bridge all the realities, which is why, famously in Jacob's dream, Jacob has this dream of a ladder that goes from the ground all the way to the heavens, and there are angels that are climbing up and down, which is again this metaphor of having our feet rooted in this world, because this is where we're taking space and shape during our time in the physical realm. And yet at the same time, our inner reality has a ladder that connects us to a spiritual root, and we are the energy that is moving up and down this ladder. That's what we're doing here. So when I think about Kabbalah and I think about Torah as a map of consciousness, as a map to this world, it's elements like that that speak to the depth of my soul. And then we see that exact same parallel ring true in every spiritual path, right? Every spiritual path, doesn't matter where a person's coming from, right? If you dig all the way in, you find the same place, because the placeless is where we all come from.
I would have to agree wholeheartedly the profound parallels between that. I mean, going deeper into what some people would perceive as numerology and understanding the seeding and weaving of those numbers and how they sort of add up to whatever it is that you want the number to add up to. And so within Taoism, we always state the highest number of 9, and it goes through the cycle of the creation of life itself, and then it's a reflection of the seed and creation of the cosmos as a gift and an offering from the mother, the Tao. And so, yes, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. The center of everything, it reveals this incredible, nourishing moment of realization, and being able to connect all of the above. For us, we work at a cultivational alchemy practice, which we call Nigong, which is internal power, using Nidan, which is in the internal alchemy, and you merge all these incredible properties together using as you referred to, the energetic system. We call them dantians, energy like elixir field. And from that, we derive this sort of awakening of a macro to a micro, a realization of this physical flesh is basically a representation of the universe. You all is one, one is all. Mm-hmm. And then you can obtain that as an anchor to then realize the ability to access all dimensions at once, as you referred to, the physical, the energetic, the spiritual. This is so profound because this does come in all forms, as you have observed, and so have I. I love hearing the way that people get to their own realization through their own path, and how powerful it is as they breathe it in, as we call it, absorbing the riches of this
Mm.
incredible consciousness.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And you remind me, as you say, that the nine, this apex number of nine, that in Kabbalah refers to this idea of Ein Sof, which means the infinite, the no end, right? This unending space. And the Medrash says that man is a small universe, and the universe is a big man.
Right, right. Wow. And I mean, just as through our own accepting and allowing this moment, the amplitude of energy, the chill that you're receiving up your spine, the energetic charge, which, through my own practices and what I teach people, you get to see these things on a clear sense level. So I can see the energy palpating through your physical body as the energetic architecture is revealed to me through my insight into this very moment. It's so powerful to experience that and be able to realize it. And again, it's like we as Taoists, we're reminded that the universe, a gift of from the mother, which is cut from the cloth of perfection, it's like a bellows. Everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time, yet revealing that man is not like that. Man can be exhausted. So we always remind people, from a Taoist perspective. One of my teachers, Jade Emperor, always says, when you remember that you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing. And so here's that epiphany, that charge that we're getting, because we're oscillating together. We're admitting this incredible realization, and it's a visceral kinesthetic response. And that's part of the humanistic sort of journey, is realizing consciousness, spiritual consciousness is now, and we're able to use this body as a tuning fork to experience all these incredible gifts.
And it is an incredible gift, like you said, in the world and not of the world. And though we get to experience this lifetime while we're here, um, we're part of something so much more. And yet at the same time, what are we at all?
Right, right, right. And I love the fact that within that, understanding the Kabbalah and the Torah, the mystical aspect of a path for a seeker within the Jewish path. Let's speak a little bit more on this sort of, like, I'm not really clear on, people reference things, energies like Jesus and Yeshua, and how does he form or align within the Jewish path of realization?
So I think Jesus, in general, of course, the foundation of Christianity, uh, he doesn't find himself as reflected in the Torah, as the Torah. Again, if I get the timeline right, is about 1,000 years, a little bit more than it, maybe 1,300 years before Jesus shows up into the world scene, into world history. Christianity is seen as like a breakaway, whether it's a new revelation or an extension of, again, of not being a Christian. I can't speak for Christianity, but from my understanding and from how I see it, uh, Jesus, of course, himself was a Jewish person who studied Torah, who grew up in Israel, who was in Nazareth. Right. This is his history, and then subsequently. The apostles and those who followed him took from his wellspring and his teachings and started the Christian faith, right, as it has evolved um, and really spread over the world. From a Jewish perspective, I don't think, at least not from the learnings that I've seen, I don't see him show up as a prominent figure within Jewish teachings. If anything, there are certainly those who have a negative depiction because they see it as this breakaway experience. And yet, at the same time, the Rambam, who's considered one of the greatest thinkers of Jewish thought in the last 1,500 years, writes very clearly the importance and value to both Christianity and Islam, which are both seen as kind of offshoots of the Old Testament, as being bringers of God consciousness to the world, that we need all these different paths, right? If it weren't for both Christianity and Islam, which make up a tremendous amount of the populace on the planet, there would be significantly less God consciousness on the planet. And so we have to recognize that everything is part of a much greater plan, a much greater vision for reality. There's no one space that a person finds themselves in and then boxes themselves in that room and says, okay, this is it. This is the end all and be all to reality. We have to realize that the world is so broad and so deep, and people are important. Everyone's journey is important. And that's where we find ourselves today.
I would have to concur with that. I mean, I go very deep, being a teacher of Taoist alchemy, and which is really one of the highest levels of ascension for a Taoist seeker. There's separation from someone who's a novice, minimizing the magnitude of the Taoist realization by just sort of like moving it to a metaphysical sort of realization, philosophy, an idea that maybe it's something greater, whereas, there's quite clearly the philosophy and then very clear path of a very religious, deep, like seated nature of our connection with many different teachers within Taoism over thousands of years. And this understanding is like this cultivating practices. And for a Taoist, we have these 9 stages of development, where it starts with the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, and then it moves to the sun body, the earth body, the moon body, and then of course it ends with the oneness body, the ultimate body, and then being all things, a true source and nature of everything at once. And it's sort of like this intimate relationship with the mother and the teacher being the universe, this whispers of the universe helping the seeker find their own truth, their self-realization, the self-evident experience that comes with that. And you lean on the teachings, the scripture of the Tao Te Ching, we call the magical register, to help guide you on this greater path of understanding, this living scripture that through the very few 81 verses that some people would call a coffee table throwaway, could literally take someone probably collectively 30 to 60 minutes to read, but it's not about reading, it's about experiencing. So from a Taoist, we talk about if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling it. What we're experiencing is that self-evident realization, and that gravitational pull that you have as a knowing to the scripture that gives you that visceral experience. And that comes for you in the form of the Torah, on a deeper nature of understanding who you really are, and then your intimate relationship with God, as God, however you perceive it, whatever that means. Speak a little bit more about that from a Jewish path of realization. How does the seeker find themselves and their relationship with God? Do they recognize themselves as all is one, one is all, or is there still this separation of God being all things but not man? Does that make
So
sense?
that makes beautiful sense. And I appreciate the question. And even before responding to the question, maybe I'll just respond to something that you said along the way. In Kabbalah and Torah, there are these. I'll use the language, but translate. So in the mind, they're seen as having these 3 epicenters called Chachma, Bina, and Dat. And Chachma is what you might call the right brain, maybe the more open, expansive, creative side of the mind. And Bina is seen as the analytical, building, thought developing part of the mind. And those are both kind of seen as more like up here, whereas dot is this the energy as those come together and form, like you said, this knowing, feeling, realization space, which bridges both the mind and the heart, which
Mm,
is the ultimate goal. That's where unity is found. That's where oneness is found, because it's the integration or the embodiment of ideas or your own thought, something that you've received from outside or something you've developed from within, but now is experienced as one's own perception of reality. And so the goal of everything is to come to this space called dat, or das, as some people pronounce it. The whole idea, the whole story of the Exodus from Egypt is really a story of going from a place of constricted consciousness to expanded consciousness, from a place
mm,
of slavery to a place of freedom, from a place of darkness to a place of light. That's what the whole story is a metaphor for in our experience. And now, kind of to lead into answering your question, which is kind of the way of the path. So uh, the stages are seen as we all begin in this idea of constriction, this idea of having a more narrow or egocentric perspective on reality. And it parallels the human life, right? That you might have heard of a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah,
mm,
which, kind of this rite of passage, 12, 13 years old, a child becomes an adult. But that parallels a very deep idea of we start off as young and immature in our perspective of self and of this reality. And then we go through what we might call a level one state of growth, from katnut to gadlut, from small to large, from constricted to expansive in terms of
mm,
consciousness. But then that happens again. The next stage is we fall back again into a new state of smallness, which is that even though we've grown, we can still have a constriction in that reality, and then we have to go through a second expansion. And so I'll speak to that, which is the stages are quite beautiful. We start in this world, and what we see is what we have, right? All we have is the material world coming into this reality, and then, unless you're born a saint, which there are some, but barring the few individuals who come into this world with a deep and expansive consciousness, we all see the world that we see. We have the parents we're given. We see a world that's mundane and that has, food, and we need shelter, and there's warm and there's cool. But at some point, we might come to an awakening that there's more to life than just what you can achieve in the physical world, or what you can achieve for your status, for your recognition, for your own honor. And you might come to a recognition that, oh, what I want is actually a more spiritual or intuitive reality. So that we might call the first level, or the first stage of growth, going from constricted to an expansive consciousness, which is, oh, instead of being oriented towards the material reality, I'm actually desiring and orienting my nature towards a more spiritual effect. But nevertheless, even that can be done from a place of ego. In fact, I think that's the only way forward in the beginning, is it's I want it because I want it, right? There's still a lot of I in there, and spirituality is still an idea. It's still a concept that you're running after. Um, Over time, the only way to get from there to that next level up is to actually drop and surrender the ego altogether, as an idea that there's a separate sense of self, right? So the to come to the realization and the truth that you're an extension of that same oneness, right? That, yeah, there is a duality as part of the way, on the way to unity, and unity is the total expression. But even from that place of unity, at some point, there's a recognition that, yes, I might be, as you said eloquently, me and the mother are one, me and the universe are one, me and the all and the essence of being are one. Uh, and I take form, I take shape as this individual, as this person that I'm in, and people are going to relate to me, and they're going to call me Moshe, and they're going to call you San, and there are names for us in this world, and there's a body we take in this world, and there are things we're doing in this world. And it's not a contradiction to the all-pervasive spirit of reality, and to be able to maintain that knowing and still be here and have this conversation. And there's an oscillation, and as you continue to grow in this process, in Torah, a tzaddik is the name of a righteous individual, or a sage, right? Someone who's attained these high levels in a way that you might just say is more constant or more consistent. And then beyond that, there's something called a chassid, which is somebody who's living this extraordinary consciousness more of the time than not. And then at the highest level, there's something called a kadosh, which is someone who's living in a complete state of enlightenment at all times and may walk in this world with that consciousness, but that the consciousness is available always, right, to everyone. It just might be in a more oscillating form. One might be there, and then the next moment something happens to them to bring up, old energy patterns that they've been carrying on to for a long time, and they fall back down into this world and realize that picture has not remained in their conscious. It's not fully embodied, it's still outside of them, so then you can continue to walk towards it. But the path is one of continual surrender and letting go, and what you're surrendering and letting go is of this shape and this form and this time, this personal history that we carry on to. In Chassidus it's called bittul hayeshus, which means to nullify the isness, all the things you think that is about you, your personal history, your story, your opinions, your beliefs, your biases, all of these elements that you've are self-generated, that you've created. The degree to which you're able to let those go allows you to step into that surrendered space. In that surrendered space, you experience what's called the Anochi, which is the ultimate I. The ultimate I is beyond you. It's beyond anyone. It is the one, and from that space, you can experience this reality.
Amen to that, brother. It's like people are like, hang on, you're a Taoist priest. Why are you even saying that? Because it's just profound, because we talk about this within Taoism. All rivers return to the ocean. And if you remind the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world. It's right here. That charge you and I are getting right now, that validation of this very moment, that visceral kinesthetic response is how we come to know the truth. And the more you attune the energetic potential of what you truly are, which is the present moment, you have this merging, as you so eloquently describe this merging of the right and left brain. We call it yin and yang, and the center point, the versica, the center point of all things, right in the middle, is where we access the Wu Ji, which is the stillness, right? So there's a merging of conscious and unconscious processes, from intellect to intuitive, all as one. One is all. That realization is when you become now, that present moment. And from a Taoist perspective, the personality is just part of the gift of your humanistic sort of like now, right? So you're given this gift, this anchor. I always tell people it's problematic for you to erase it, but realize that the more you return to who you really are through your own seeking, through your own realization, you will return to your default. And what's the default? It's being selfless. It's being in service to others. And people are like, well, Jefu, I want to get on my path. I want to cultivate. I really want to just get into the alchemy and separate electric from magnetic and do all these incredible things using gold and platinum and silver and all this kind of crystalline forms of perfection. And I'm like, that's part of the Taoist journey. We are second to none with the energetics. I understand this, but you're missing the point. They're like, what are you talking about? When you are selfless and you're in service to others, you are in service to yourself. Oh, okay. Oh, that sounds completely different. What does that mean? You are me, I am you. We are one. And so that true understanding of realizing that becomes completely, now as you speak of this complete surrendering more of the ego state, as you described it. Within Taoism, we return back to the true expression of the mother, which is contracting and expanding, the bellows of all things. Everything is, you're everything and nothing at the same time. And that moment in between that, between the breath in and the breath out, is that center point. And then you access it all. And that, of course, from a Taoist perspective, you create these incredible alchemical responses that come in the form of what people would consider miracles. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, things take place that would fundamentally, from a psyche or an intellect-based reality, superhuman. Yet you're just returning to the natural nature of reality and understanding that that present moment is now. And then all of a sudden, we flow, the fluidity, as we call it, the flow, we call it the Wu Ji, which
Hmm.
is effortless action, effortless effort. And, just as you and I are embodying this incredible conversation, it's effortless. It's so beautiful. The mirroring effect of what we speak of. And that's what we also talk about within Taoism. It's like you are a mirror of unifying the body with the spirit, with the energy. And as that continues to amplify, the death of the ego state, as you put it, so it contracts and expands and contracts and expands. And when you're at your lowest, you're really at your highest. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes such beautiful sense. Gosh, what a gift to even be on this call with you. The you said it. You said it. There's a verse that says "Kol anachalim holchem el hayam," which means all rivers go to the sea. And in Kabbalah, the sea is a reference to the mother.
Mm,
Bina is Ima Ilah, which means the mother, the elevated spirit that we're all coming from and returning to. And this state that you call it the Wuji, the center space, which is the Das in Torah. You'd reminded me that when we think about the word God, if I recall, it says in the Tao, right, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao, right? And
the
one of the
name that
things
can be named is not the name. The way
that's
that
right.
can be walked is not the way.
Right. And so that's one of the reasons why, in the Torah tradition, we don't say God's name. We actually just say the name Hashem, which means the
Mm,
name, instead of actually saying the name that's written on paper, uh, in order to preserve the idea that if you call on the name itself, right, at any point you're limiting the name itself and what it's pointing towards. But if you do look at the name which is spelled Yud and then a Hey, a Vav and then a Hey, which it's so profound and so beautiful and so obviously true that when we the letter yud means always, like a constant, something that's always there, and then the next three letters hey vav hey means the now, the present moment, and that the name of God in the Torah tradition is the eternal present, the always now, the ever present. And the degree to which one moves into that space is the degree to which one realizes and experiences the truth towards which the name itself points, without having to say a name or point to some idea or a deity that exists as a separate entity of reality, but to recognize that it's the underlying nature of reality and the constant flow of this world. And when people say, I want to have a deeper connection with God, but I don't know how to connect to God. I always ask them, well, what's happening? Well, anything that's happening is God, right? Speaking to you, through you, from you, and all around you, because that is life. A great story. I was meditating on my couch one Saturday afternoon. All my kids were out of the house, and my wife was by a friend, and my daughter came in. She was about 7 years old at the time. Came in with another one of her cousins who was also seven. And when she came in, she said, "Oh, let's go ask my dad if we can have some popcorn." Well, they walked into the room and they saw me meditating, and my daughter turned to her cousin and said, "Oh, we can't ask him." And her cousin said, "Why not?" She said, "Oh, he's meditating." And she said, "Oh." And so my daughter said, "Well, I'm sure he'll let us have the popcorn." And so she turned around and started walking towards the kitchen. And her cousin said, "What is he doing?" And she said, "Oh, he's meditating." She said, "I don't know what that means. What does that mean?" And she said, "Oh, he's talking to God." And she said, "You should try it sometime." So her cousin says, "I do talk to God, but God never talks back to me." You know. And my daughter said, "Well, that's why you should meditate, right?"
so
And so profound, so beautiful. It also took me completely out of my meditation, but uh, because I was enraptured by the conversation they were having, and I started to laugh because it was so cute. But she understood something so deep, which is the idea that we need to get quiet to realize that um, we can hear the conversation. The conversation's happening. We when we quiet ourselves and we allow ourselves to listen, it's happening through us. It's in us. It's an always. It never stopped. Right. The conversation is this ongoing conversation of life. Life is the conversation. Um, and it's taking place in our minds and in our hearts and in the reality as it shows up for us. This is this ever present nature. Uh, so when we talk about surrender, it's really surrendering the attachment to all the noise that we carry inside of us that is self-created, self-generated, and then being able to see that, allow it to be, because it's nothing's wrong with it. It is there, and it's our the degree to which we hold on to it and make it something separate that blocks our ability to kind of tune in and to hear and to perceive that deeper reality.
Yeah, it brings me back to the energetic potential, and that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And then that, when you truly understand that from a Taoist seeker perspective, it's realizing that everything goes from light to wave to matter to particle, from your attention intention, creating this altered reality from the mother, from perfection. We're cutting the cloth and changing everything, that it turns from your attention intention to energy. And the energy has a vibration, the vibration has a frequency. And if met with that resonance, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. So it enters equal to or greater than within this space that materializes within a new age spiritual sort of communicative terminology of a manifestation or something of that nature, where you're synchronizing. The emotions are really an expression of a turbulence within your universe. And so, as a human being, you are the ambassador of this incredible planet, Earth, and your general seeking goal is to merge with humanity, raising that frequency, raising that conscious, as we would call spiritual consciousness, and embracing that, embodying that, and making that one. And so, from a Taoist perspective, that's very much part of when I tap in, and I've been channeling energies for over 30 years. My first direct channel was with Latsu 30 years ago, and he's my teacher today from a second to second basis. Now, a lot of people today might go, well, wow, that's kind of, and a lot of people 30 years ago, I would have people coming to me that would consider themselves having a psychotic episode or breakdown, and they're 2 seconds away from being admitted to a psych ward, as opposed to now, someone would have the equivalent to that same experience and then realize they're channeling the Palladians and open a YouTube channel and get 100,000 followers. These type of weird, it's an evolutionary realization, right? The frequency has entered a whole different level. And from your own admission, speaking on the left and right brain, and then moreover a brainwave perspective, if we were to sort of analyze it from a psychological, neurological based realization, you get to these brainwaves that sort of I've measured to be equivalent to moments of healing. When I hit, gamma brainwaves, 40 to 400 hertz, there is physical healing. There is a altered reality that is undeniable, where you see physical flesh transmute before your very eyes and return back to its original state. That is just a frequency. And this is why people lured to Taoism, because they want the alchemy aspect. But understand that that alchemy aspect is part of the greater selflessness that you obtain, which sort of like just puts your personality back to a reset. And you have these channels, like for example, when I channel Latsu, or I'm in conference with him, it's a dialogue with a facet. What we call the diamond is perfection. It's a facet of the diamond, and perfection is the monologue that you have with the mother as one. And so it's just a form of information, as would be someone's realization to call themselves the access to the Akashic records or halls of Amente, or however they receive it, the Bible, the Torah, the Tao Te Ching, however it is that you gravitate to that resonance that embodies this now moment. That's where the monologue is truly powerful, and that's where the self-evident realization is what is that now. It doesn't have a place, person, or thing. I love the way you mentioned that. We don't mention in title what is self-evident, which is that now moment, which is all
Mhm.
things. All is one, one is all. And so this is a very powerful moment to merge you. Whereas I feel like there's a real uh, sort of like movement to separate the individual from their truth that goes on within all cycles of human history, but more so than now when they start separating things using things like conscious agency and things of that nature. You will never return to your knowing when you start separating yourself with these type of titles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. You know, I think from what you just said, the deepest element that really speaks to me is this idea that we are living in a collective awakening right now, that there is a real transformative experience that's taking place around the whole globe. And with all of the upheaval that the planet is experiencing, and it is experiencing a lot of challenge in many areas and for many people, the opportunity and the tuning in, like you had mentioned, that the body's like a tuning fork, and tuned correctly, there's so much to tap into: the energy, the frequency, the oneness of reality, and everyone in their own space and in their own time and in their own way. But we are all part of this collective evolution of consciousness. That's what we are. That's what we're doing. That's what we're being. Uh, and like you said, you could be an individual who's experiencing a channel of the Palladians, or you're sitting there and you're putting together deeper understandings of the universe in one way or another. But the idea that it's happening is undeniable. There's an undeniable, beautiful expression of that, and uh, it's almost like if you listen carefully, it's like, if there were a concert going on in the distance, and it wasn't close, but you could hear it. You can hear that there's a concert. You can't make out the song. You can't exactly make out the music, but there's a concert. And all of a sudden everyone recognizes there's something happening. There's music that's being played. And and there's a lot of people on the other side saying, "What are you talking about? There's no concert. I don't see a band. I don't see a stage." And there's a lot of people who are still, they don't hear it, they don't see it, and so they cling and hold on to other parts of this world, which are also beautiful and have their place in history. But for those who can hear it, they start walking towards the stage. And there's a lot of people walking towards that stage right now, and it comes in waves, and it comes in this. This clear expression of God wanting to be found, of this godliness wanting to be seen and experienced, and again, everyone in their own way and in their own space, and how that's coming to and through for them. To me, that's so beautiful, and again, and in a time where, if you want, you see, for most of history, if you wanted this, you were essentially stuck with whatever your village had at best, if you even had access to that. Most people were illiterate, and if you were lucky enough to find a teacher, if there was a teacher in your region, a spiritual teacher of sorts, you could go and you can learn from them. Today, if you want to learn about any of the ideas you just mentioned, you can go to Amazon and look it up. You can go onto YouTube and type it in and find a teacher who's, meaning, the opportunity is there. And so, because the opportunity exists for the first time in history, there's this blossoming. This like powerful blossoming of desire and will to grow, will to go beyond. That knowing that even if I can't tell you what song's being played, but I know a song is being played. That much I can tell you, and I want to find out, and I want to hear, and I want to tune in. And whether you're doing yoga, or you're going a Taoist path, or a Buddhist path, or a religious path, or another spiritual path, or you're sitting there and you just found a meditation center in whatever city you're sitting in, or you turned on a frequency and just to listen to pulsating frequencies. Everyone's looking, who's looking, but today they can find in in a way that's never existed before, and something to be seen and appreciated, so that even though one can look at the world and say, the world like it's upside down sometimes, and that's very, very surface level. because at a very deep and fundamental level, there's this beautiful awakening of consciousness that's taking place on our planet right now. And it's a gift to be alive during this time.
It truly is. It truly is, my friend. It brings us back to that tuning fork, realization, and then how that is transmitted within your relationship with the earth and where you stand on the earth within the circadian rhythm of your very presence, and what that means from a brainwave perspective, because the magnetic field that is being transmitted from the Earth center that basically protects us from, you know, um, the energies that are being sort of transmitted from the sun. You create this light spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum, which we call the rainbow, and the center of that would be reflectant to the center point, right, the pinky green right in the middle. And that, for many different people from an energetic perspective, is a realization to all things that the heart center is the truth teller to everything. And if you look at it from a Hindu aspect, I meant to ask you, so there's 10 points within your path that you speak of, and does it create a sacred geometry? Makaba, is that correct?
That's right. Merkava is one of them, but these are the 10 elements are the 10 sphirot or energetic elements that essentially make up the total structure. Again, I don't have a picture in front of me, but it almost looks like these concentric triangles that start with a point at the top and a point at the bottom. And if you were to imagine the point at the top as a symbol to maybe the crown chakra or the space of infinite oneness, the higher energy, and the space at the bottom as the vessel that contains all of it within. Uh, the the movement down, right, is this constant balancing of realities of a left, right, center, left, right, center, left, right, center, and then reception at the bottom. So oversimplified, you've got these three spaces. You've got the top point, which is the infinite, the bottom point, which is essentially empty, but it's powers that it can receive everything from the top to the bottom. And then you have the energy as it all moves from the top to the bottom, which again is, if you were to break it down, those 10 into three, that reflects in that word one that we spoke about earlier, the Aleph, the Ches, and the Dalet, the Aleph being that top point, the Dalet being the material receptor at the bottom, and then the energy and flow in the middle. And the goal is to live within that balance, to have, both wisdom and meaning and articulation. And as that flows down into the space of realization and unity, and then that expresses itself as then the energy of love and kindness, but is balanced with justice and integrity, and ultimately flows into a space of inner harmony and beauty. And then that continues to flow down into a desire to move and develop things in this world, and yet do so with humility and gratitude, which then flows into another center of creation and connection. And all of that energy flows into the embodying spirit, which is the individual.
Wow. Yeah, it's so the parallels are mind blowing. This is the upper dantian, the middle dantian, the lower dantian. This is the sun, the earth, and the moon. And the sun is electric, the earth is magnetic. You merge the two together and you create this element that is the magnetic fluidity that accesses all things from the resonance of the lower dantian, the moon element. So it's the merging of the two, which is sort of mind blowing how similar you're describing these things, and we have our own version of it, but it's the same, which is really
Yes,
wild.
that's why one of the deep reasons why I titled the book that I had written "It's All the Same to Me" was for many reasons. At the baseline, it's because it's based on the idea of hishtavos, coined actually by a number of individuals. So instead of giving credit there, I'll just say that the word hishtavos means equanimity or sameness, and it is a state of consciousness to be able to let go of all the rigidity in life and the judgment of the ego. But behind that is this idea that there is a sameness across cultures, across paths, which is when you tap into truth. Truth is um, uh, undifferentiated. It's the same. Truth is truth, meaning capital T. Truth is one that exists, and it's one you can tap into, tune into, experience, to be in alignment with. And again, it doesn't matter what if we might use different words and different language to describe the same thing, but the energy is the same, the experience is the same, the knowing is the same, the latter is ultimately the same. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of when minds get to come together and to share and to cross pollinate, to understand. Like, that's how you're looking at this. I actually thought it was. I got chills when you had said it. That this morning the piece of Kabbalah that I was looking at was describing um, the metaphorically, Moses and Joshua, kind of the leaders in most of the Old Testament, as Moses being the sun and Joshua being the moon, that those are the two different energies that we're seeing over there, which is this kind of higher consciousness that's in this constant state of flow. And then you have a next part of the consciousness which can receive the light and then translate it and shine it out into the world. And that there's this dichotomy that we're always playing with, and we're always working with energies of the sun and the moon, and we're always using the energy of a higher consciousness and then the consciousness of the personality that can both intuit and then reflect that light back out into our lives and into the world. And so that, we're all in this world, so we're all using the sun and we're all using the moon and we're all using the earth as part of our metastructure, because it is part of the truth, it is part of our reality. So I just thought it was beautiful that you had said that, and that was exactly what I was working on this morning when it had come up for me. So some beautiful synchronicity right there.
Oh, once again, I mean, again, this is the light, the information, and the lower Dantian is the energy. Again, another cross-referencing and intersection of a parallel that is undeniable. And it's like it's just transmuted into its own beautiful message in its own beautiful way, bringing us back to the monologue that is the present moment, the now. I want to thank you, my dear friend, for sharing your time with us today. It's been a real pleasure. I'm always so grateful and welcoming this type of conversation, and I've learned so many incredible things from you. Within Taoism, we always remind ourselves the student is the teacher is the student. Whenever you lose sight of that, you dismiss other people's belief system, you dismiss your own. And so I really enjoyed this incredible conversation. I look forward to another very soon, and we will definitely have that on the schedule. And I'll reach out to you after this podcast. So, in closing, I want to, and I'm just being mindful of your time because I could keep going, but I could also hear your children are like, I need their dad. It's going to happen. So, I will never ever sacrifice time with my children. So I am very grateful that you spent some time with me today. In closing, I'm going to put all your social media under this podcast, and then I want you to share with the audience a little bit something that you would like to share with them. You mentioned your book and a few other things where they can find you and go into more deep understanding as you share this knowledge with the internet.
Well, first of all, I mean, to your blessings before, and the feelings are certainly mutual in terms of the time that we've gotten to spend together. I felt this was a very holy conversation, and I do look forward to the next one. And as far as the work that I'm doing, so it's my name, MosheGersht.com, where you can find essentially everything that we're doing these days. Try to have a presence on social media. So if you're using Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, any of those. But there's free samples of all the books that I've written on my website. There's lots of different pieces that I've written up separately from the books that are on the site, as well as a lot of different classes and meditations that are available there now. So that's probably the quickest way to get the most if any of this spoke to or is interested to anybody out there. And again, really, really grateful. What a beautiful, sacred conversation.
Absolutely amazing. In closing, I will ask you one last question. What is your definition of consciousness?
Hmm. Simply The knowing being.
Beautiful. I've never, in hundreds of podcasts, I've never had the same answer. And every one of them is perfect. It's beautiful. Thank you, my dear friend. I just want to thank you again for sharing your time with me today. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.